Hi, everyone, and welcome to Signature West Podcast. My name is Sam West. I'm your host from Palm Springs, California. My guest today is Cody Renegar. He is the author of the book Changing the Stars. It's his own story. Cody had a very challenging, to say the least, childhood upbringing, but somehow he managed to become a father, a grandfather, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, um, an artist, a hairstylist, and a book author. He's going to share with us today how he managed to survive and navigate through the tough upbringing to who he is today. Hi, Cody. Come on in.
Hey, Sam.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well. So, do you remember the first 7 years of your childhood?
I do. I actually have a very, very early memories of my childhood.
What was it like, if you can summarize it? The
Well,
first 7 years before things got really even more interesting.
a lot of the first 7 years we were homeless. We lived under bridges. We lived under shelters. Anything that resembled a shelter, we just kind of were surviving and kind of on an adventure. We were very young, so I don't think we realized we were homeless. I just think that we realized we were hungry. That was the thing. But otherwise, I had two little brothers and two older sisters, and we were just kind of living the life that we knew.
And
We're
so
wild.
you're in the middle of two oldest sisters
I
and
am.
two younger brothers.
That's correct.
So were you the one that kind of like being led by the two sisters, usually the older
My
one?
mom would kind of disappear for days and weeks at a time. She had a really sad battle with drugs and alcohol, so she would disappear. So it was really up to my two older sisters to keep myself and my two little brothers alive, honestly.
So what was the first experience when you guys entered into the foster care system?
Into the foster care system, the first link, we went from being homeless. The police took us. They found us just kind of like wild feral cats, really. They found us, and then they put us in an emergency shelter. And for that shelter became our home for several months. And so that was my first experience really going into the system. And that was a beautiful experience. That shelter was fantastic. We didn't realize that was temporary. We thought that's where we lived now. So that was a good experience. And then from there, we kind of bounced around into different foster homes, and there wasn't one actually that was a good experience until much later, until I was about 7 years old. So
And where was your mom then?
where was my mom and dad?
Yeah, where did she go, or what happened to her?
Well, we were taken from our mom, and later in life, I found my mother again, and I asked that same question, and she said that she literally walked out after the court was over and the court deemed her an unfit mother. She literally walked out of the courthouse and just kept on walking. She didn't even return home, and she ended up traveling around the country, becoming a housekeeper and all kinds of things. She even ended up here in Hollywood being a housekeeper at one point, according to her stories. And my dad had remarried. Again, I found this out later in life. My dad had remarried and had four more boys. So I have four half-brothers that I didn't meet until I was 24, 23.
And have you been in touch with them since, either one of them?
I have. Unfortunately, my mother died about 5 years ago. She was hit by a car while she was riding a bicycle. I mean, I only chuckle a bit because if you knew my mother, it's kind of fitting. She's just kind of a wild lady, and we kind of expected nothing less. My dad, he was in a cornfield in Illinois. I mean, I had no idea. We all started our journey out in South Texas. So when I finally found him when I was in my early 20s, he was in Illinois, like literally in the middle of a cornfield.
And there was no contact of them at that point of trying to reach out or trying to
None.
figure out? None. And is it true that you guys went through 18 foster home places?
Yes, well, 18 homes, and including my mother's before we were taken away. It was 18 homes, and one of the in writing this book, I was lucky enough to have all of the files that came with the intake every time we were taken in and out and switched from homes. So in one of those files, it said that we were in 18 different homes within just a matter of a few years. Like
Do you
4 years.
remember? Do you remember the 18?
Oh yeah, I remember very clearly most of it. I mean, one of the homes was a warehouse, and another home was under a bridge, and they counted those in that.
Oh, they did. So that wasn't part of
That was not foster homes. We were
So,
probably in a matter about 6 or 7 foster homes within 2
so
years.
6 or 7 that you were switched back, from one to the other
That's
family,
correct.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Any favorite?
Yes, definitely a favorite. The ones that didn't hurt us, the only ones that didn't hurt us were the Gateleys. They ended up kind of following our story, and they were watching us bouncing it out of these awful homes. And finally, they just said, "That's enough. We're going to take these kids back." And those people were actually the house parents at the original shelter the night we were taken from our mother. So they knew our story. And we had all kind of bonded with them.
So at the age of 7, which is a year later, you were adopted by a family, or was it all 5 of you?
No, we ended up being separated because at that point we were pretty wild kids with a lot of, we needed a lot of nurturing, a lot of attention, a lot of nurturing and a lot of attention. And so nobody was willing to take on 5 kids
Right.
that needed the amount of love that we needed. So we were separated in different homes.
So you end up, I would say the lucky one, not so sure, being adopted by this family, right? And that was a year later.
I was adopted. I turned 7 in June, and I was adopted in November.
By yourself?
Yes, by myself. Yeah, each one of us were separated and adopted into different individual families.
And you were excited to be picked up by this couple.
Yeah, I dreamed of this.
You dreamed of it, and then what happened?
I remember driving to their home and trying to decide which house was mine in the neighborhood, and I didn't know. And we finally saw the biggest, most beautiful home with this big field of horses and all, and I just felt like I had won the lottery, the adoption lottery. And it wasn't very long into that home where they had remorse. I think I wasn't what they wanted, and they pretty much made that clear.
Let's send him back.
Yeah, they had already signed. They already bought me.
So it turned out to be the father, the husband, I guess, of the family was not exactly what you thought you dreamed of.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he, in turn, I think that they thought they wanted a male. Okay, let me paint this picture. They had 3 girls. My adopted dad's brother had 3 girls, and they just wanted a son to carry the name. They wanted a son to play the guitar and in church, and they had painted this very clear picture of who they wanted me to be. But all I needed was a safe place to be, So it just didn't work. The mother of that family just never warmed up to me from just weeks after. I don't even know why. She just never accepted me as their son.
Were you the only child that they had?
They had 3 older girls who had all kind of moved off. They were much older than I, so they had several of them were in college. 2 of them were in college. The other one was about to be in college. So I was kind of an only child at that point.
And then he was very disciplinary. He was very harsh. He
yes.
was very,
very, very bad. Yeah, very, very, very violent man. But he didn't intend that. He just didn't know what to do with me, and he was raised by a violent man as well.
Then he shouldn't have adopted a child. If he doesn't know what to do with a child, do not adopt a child.
Right. Especially a child who had so much damage that I had.
Yeah, if you can't handle walking a dog, don't adopt a dog.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then you met a neighbor.
Yeah, my neighbor. I had always identified as an artist, even from 5 years old. It was a source of pride for me being an artist. So I was just drawing my little heart out. And right. This neighbor had horses, and this lady was this phenomenal artist who painted extremely lifelike horses and oil paint. And I would just go sit and watch her while all the kids were out playing. I remember her asking me many times, "Do you want to go outside and play with the other kids?" And I'm like, "No, I'm right where I want to be. I want to be right here learning how to paint with you." And so she kind of took me under her wing, and just it was a very safe place to be.
And you were 12 at the time.
I was 12 when I met her.
Her name was Michelle, I believe.
Yeah, Michelle.
So were you still at the time living with the family, the same family that you were at 6?
Yeah, I was that where I'm sorry.
The same family you were still living with that adopted you?
Yes, this lady lived across two fields, so I had to climb kind of over the top of a mountain. On the other side of that mountain is where she lived. She lived in a barn. Her apartment was in a barn, and her art was set up in an actual horse stall. So I learned how to paint in a horse stall.
So the whole time you're living with this family, it was same the father that's abusive or disciplinary and doesn't know what to do with you, and the mother did not really expect, got what she didn't expect. This
Mhm.
is the whole time you're still living with the same under the same structure, under the same roof.
Yes. Yeah, and I just found my safe places. Her house, the woods, animals, anything. I just was able to escape as much as possible.
And how old were you by the time you must have been 7 and 2 or 12, 14, somewhere in that range?
Yeah, I was 15 when I went back into another children's home, which was like a 150-year-old orphanage.
Why did you leave that family and go that other orphanage?
Well, the father of that adoptive family was a very violent disciplinarian, and I went to school. I went to a private Christian school there in this town, and we did the scoliosis test. And if you remember in school, when you did a scoliosis test, you have to bend over and arch your back and all. Well, I did that, and the nurse came in, and she went to lift my shirt to check my spine, and my clothes were stuck to my body from these whippings. And because of my open wounds, it was still stuck from my neck to my ankles. So I was just an open wound, basically. And so they called the police there, and the police said, we have to get this kid out of that home. So the alternative was to send me down south, 6 hours away, to a beautiful, beautiful children's home.
And how was that experience?
Wow, they had a herd. I've always just been drawn to horses, and I was so excited that orphanage had a herd of horses for me to ride. That was fantastic. There was a lot of love. While I was at the adoptive home, my grades just plummeted because I was just being, it was just such a hostile environment. So as soon as I came to this children's home, my grades went straight up to A's and B's, and I had no problem. My personality, I really kind of understood who I was. My personality came out. I mean, it was just an immense amount of love in that home.
And then at 19, you decided to go into barber school to become a barber or a hairstylist.
Yeah, skipping way ahead, I went into barber school, and I kind of chose that profession because I was volunteering at this nursing home, and the lady, it was just like a wealth of wisdom there at that nursing home. And this lady told me that if I wanted to truly know what I wanted to do for a living, to write down everything I could think of and put it on a piece of paper. And whenever I thought of a job or a career, just pull up that piece of paper and
Right.
see if it fit. And about 2 or 3 weeks into it, I was still doing that. I would even open the yellow pages and kind of look through different jobs and see. And I was feeling a bit discouraged actually because nothing was fitting until I went to get my hair cut. And I went out to my car and I put out the piece of paper, and it literally was absolutely everything on my list. So I drove straight from there to barber school. Because I had my hair cut from a barber, I thought maybe a barber. And once I got into barber school, I realized that there was so much more to this. And I ended up eventually going to cosmetology school, but most of my career, I really focused on women's hair. So kind of launched me into a whole other world I didn't expect.
And then at 20, I'm not sure if by accident or was it planned, you became a father.
It was not planned. I did become a father. So my son's mother is a sweetheart that I met at the children's home. We both were orphans there at that children's home later in our, I think she was 14 and I was 15 when we met. And I had since left and joined the Army and had a bunch of stuff. I was a year and a half older than her. So she calls me one day while I was projected to go work at this kayaking. I was going to be a river guide in Colorado, and I was just like on my way to have this new life. And she called me and said she was pregnant by one of my friends, actually at that children's home. And she wasn't my girlfriend. She was just kind of my on and off again little crush we had. I didn't understand. It was kind of a puppy love deal. So she calls me and tells me she's pregnant, and they're kind of sending her away to kind of like an unwed mother, pray the baby away kind of thing. I don't know, but she called me. So I just turned around, sold that Volkswagen bus and bought a little sedan, and went down and picked her up. We ended up playing house. She ended up having a miscarriage. And then before you know it, we were pregnant with my son.
And then I think you were 20, but then at 24, you discovered your own sexuality.
At 24, Cindy and I, we just kind of realized that we were better as friends. That was not, and also I just didn't understand that I was gay, and that didn't play a factor in our divorce by any means, or maybe it did. Who knows? An underlying, but we just knew that we were better friends, you know? And so we just went our separate ways. And I started. It was the first time in my life I actually was really able to delve into my sexuality or explore it. Up until then, I thought maybe I was just curious or kinky or European.
Confused.
Yeah, or confused. I just didn't know. I really honestly didn't understand that there are different categories of sexuality. Since I had been raised in such an intense Christian surrounding, had I ever heard of homosexuality, it was in the Sodom and Gomorrah, and it was strike you down. And I was like, well, that's not me.
Right.
And then I got older, and I was able to feel a little more comfortable to delve into my sexuality. I dated girls and guys, and it was very obvious to me that I was gay.
And who's raising the kid at the time?
Yes, I had a son. Yeah, well, at that point, my son's mother and I were we were sharing. You know, he was with me every weekend. We were pretty much having half and half. And a little bit later on, she remarried to a guy that was just extremely unhealthy. And so Levi, my son, was not safe in that home. So I took him full time. It's the best thing I ever did.
And then from that point on, you were just obviously openly gay, a father.
My son rode on my shoulders when he was 3 years old in my first pride parade and his first pride parade. But yeah, and he's never once even phased, even though, you know, I never told him being gay was right or wrong. I've never told him about religion was right or wrong. I always just gave him all the information he needed and tried to set, you know, the best example I possibly could. And thankfully, when he got older, a grown man, he's the most loving, accepting, kind. You know, he turned out to be a pretty good guy. The best thing I.
How old is he now?
He is 24 now, and he and his girlfriend have 3 gorgeous kids. So I'm a grandpa of 3 beautiful babies.
Right. And then eventually you met your current husband. That was like 4 years ago.
Yeah, just over 4 years ago, my husband Terry and I met on Tinder. I swiped right. It's the best decision I could have made at that point. He is amazing.
So here's the question that I have. You know, I thought my childhood was rough, and in my opinion, it was. But you know, obviously, it's comparison. It doesn't compare. And often people say, you know, well, you made it, and you survived it, and here you are. And until recently, I realized there's a price to pay. There's a price to pay for having to survive that trauma, and often, you know, it's concealed. Often it's we don't talk about it. After I didn't talk about it, and then but it does. I want to say it fucks you up. It fucked me up. So where was that for you? I mean, obviously, you know, you have children, you're in a relationship. You know, no one comes out of this trauma like a free bird and, you know, completely happy, clappy, you know, marching to his own drum kind of sort of thing.
Right. Well, I mean, no one's a pretty broad category. I think that some people do, I mean, there's you have to put in the work. When I realized that I had a lot of healing and a lot of obstacles to overcome, I think was just in watching those around me, the other people that grew up in the shelters and foster homes and orphanages that I was in. As I was getting older, I'm seeing a trend and I'm seeing a pattern, and these people that are just constantly identifying as victims, and they don't release themselves to go higher and move on. And I realized I was also in that category. So I just didn't want to do that. And, you know, someone gave me a beautiful analogy once. It says that when someone's down, if you're picking them up, it's so much harder for them. Wait, am I saying this wrong? It's so much harder to pick them up than it is for them to pull you down. So I just did not want to be pulled down. So I thought I want to be some sort of beacon. So I'm just going to set an example. It's very in my early 20s. I just thought, well, if nobody can get out of this, I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be the one to show them how to get out. So I just really focused. I would delve into any pain I had, any flaw. I actively sought out my flaws. I actively sought out trends and patterns within myself because I wanted to be the best me I can be. And I know that sounds cliche, but why would I want to carry that baggage? Why would I drag that with me throughout the rest of my
Well,
life?
it's been, it's been embedded in you from such a young age. It's not that
Right.
you want to carry it. It's almost like, why do you want to carry the memory of your mom? It's there. How do you transfer that memory of her after the court checking out, or father's doing this and getting remarried, um, and turning that into life is tough as it is. Coming out is tough as it is. Coming out at 24, I don't want to say late. It's a little, it's a little harder
Yeah.
than coming out at 20 or 17 or 15. Even that in itself is a challenge, but somehow you manage to navigate through that.
I think I can't really take a lot of credit because I think I was just made this way. My spirit never, people ask me often what's different, because my two little brothers have been in and out of prison. One of them's homeless now. And one of my oldest sister is still recovering. She still identifies as a victim. And I just never wanted to be that. I didn't want to
So
go
what
that
do,
direction.
what do you say? So now that you said it, so your siblings, you guys are all in the same boat. You guys had the
Yeah.
same experience. You're in the
Mm.
middle. Too old, obviously. I would say the oldest one usually gets it the hardest, and the youngest one gets it, I want to say, the easiest because they're pampered and they're, usually they're the favorite. But then you got the
Right.
middle, which is you. I was the youngest. So, like you just said, so now the other four haven't really dealt with it the same way you have.
Mhm.
What do you contribute that to?
The ironic thing is the youngest one was too young to remember anything that happened to us. I'm not even sure he knows what happened to us. He was about 10 months old when we were taken and placed in foster care. And I think he was 4 or 5 when he was adopted. And he's the one that's, they say the nature versus nurture, but he was born an alcoholic and he stayed that way his
He was
whole life.
born. He was born alcoholic.
My mother says I drank vodka like it was water while I was pregnant with him. That's what she told me. And he has just struggled. So, and also his dad went to prison. He has a different father than I do, and my other
Oh,
brother has a father. So both my brothers are just in and out of prisons, and they actually had amazingly wonderful, nurturing adopted parents. So I don't, I just don't know the answer to that question. I don't know what was different in me than it was in them, other than I had a strong desire to not fail.
so even with their adopted, nurturing adopted uh, new parents, they still couldn't pull themselves out.
Yeah. I think that these particular parents had both tried to have kids. They had no natural children of their own. So I think that they just were so happy about having kids that they didn't want to scold their kids. They didn't want to tell them no. They didn't want to discipline or anything. They just wanted to be yes parents and just always, always yes. And that is definitely not the way to parent. And it gave them just this wild free will to do and be anything they wanted, which is fantastic. But they chose prison over and over and over.
So being in a relationship, whether I'm not sure if you're married or not. I think you are.
I am
So
married.
so you're married. Being in a relationship in itself is challenging. Under
Yes.
even like the most perfect, what a perfect couple mean, that came from a decent background, it's still challenging.
Mhm.
Get along, you come with your own baggage. I'm sure he has his own baggage. Um, how do you even how did you deal with to be able to sustain a relationship that you can sustain for 4 years? It's healthy, children are involved, and yet you both have, at least you do, you have a whole history of lots of chaos that, I don't know, it must impact you to some degree.
I think that the key to that is being extremely specific whenever you're looking for a partner. I I struggled in dating for many years. I call myself a serial long-term dater. I had several relationships. There were, all about 3 years long, and every single one of them, there was some raging trust issues, and so I just found myself in a spot where I needed to reevaluate who I am. Like I said before, I saw some patterns, and I was just like, I do not want to go through another breakup, another, not bad decision, but another relationship that has failed. So I didn't date at all. I gave myself 2 years. I said, I'm just going to spend time with me. I regrounded myself. I reconnected to Cody, and I just started traveling. I went to Greece. I went to, I just started traveling and just eat, praying, and loving, the whole way around. But I just thought I found Cody. I really just paused, and I said, before I get into another relationship, before I repeat another pattern, I needed to turn inside and date myself and find myself. And I did not want to bring any baggage to the next relationship, because the next relationship was going to be the last.
And that was the one.
And that's my cherry. Yeah. Finally, 2 years later, I decided I was ready. My heart was ready. I was strong. I knew who I was. I didn't want to bring anything to a relationship. You want to bring your best you at all times. And I think I was finally ready. And it literally was just weeks when I swiped right and met my husband on Tinder. And the thing that I found in searching myself was I needed somebody that was kind and patient and nurturing, and someone who just accepts me in all my flaws and in all my glory. And I was actively, much like I did with that list of finding my job, I knew exactly, now that I turned inward, I knew exactly what I was looking for. I knew exactly who Cody needed to match. And I was completely whole and fine, and I didn't need anybody to complete me, I just was ready to just have somebody enhance me. And you can't see now, but this entire wall is full of photos of us just from all over the world. And this man is just taken my little broken heart, and we just traveled the world. He's shown me a whole new way to live, and he has 100% embraced me, and that enables me to be the best me I can be as well. So I just would encourage all of you to be extremely picky. There's 8 billion people on this planet. Pick the one that's going to be kind.
So why did you write the book?
Oh, wow. I never thought. I worked so hard on healing and being stronger my whole life. I never in my life did I think I was going to reopen these wounds. And, and it was so hard to do. And I just needed to write this book for all those that were still stuck there. I had healed, and I had climbed my way out, and I felt like I was the strongest me I could be in that moment. And I needed to share it. This book isn't for any other reason but to just maybe be some sort of beacon or light for those that are still 45 years old and stuck as a victim and in a victim mentality, and only identify. And a lot of them don't realize they're doing it. And I just think that this book will show them that they have the choice to choose happiness absolutely every day, in every way, in every moment.
How is the relationship now with your siblings? Do you see them often? Are you still in touch?
Well, my 2 little brothers, my youngest brother is still homeless in Colorado, in Denver, and he is an alcoholic. He told me he drinks a handle of vodka every day, which I'm not sure how aware that's happening, but he just prefers to be homeless. It's just how he wants to be. I have tried to, all of us have tried to help him, and he's chosen this. And my other brother he's just got out of jail again for, I think, his 8th time or 9th time, and he's in 20 years he just keeps going back in. So I can't really have a relationship with either one of those. They're just not around. They're not available.
Right.
And honestly, I don't think I would, even if I chose. Those are the kind of people I choose to be in my life. Just because they're my blood does not mean that I need them around me. They're just not unhealthy. They're not healthy people, and they are not trying to work on themselves. And that's just not me. I've only come as far as I have because I surround myself with strong people who make me a better me. My oldest sister, we have a small dialect from time to time, but she's just on a different plane than I am. And so I have one sister, Sue, the one that's just above me. I haven't really mentioned her, but she is an absolute angel. And her and I have just been partners in this life. And I couldn't imagine going through this life. And I probably would not have survived. I mean, I'm I'm 100% sure that I would not have survived if my older sister had not taken me in and really become the only mother I've ever known.
So she was the influencer on you. That
She is who I
she was a helper.
dedicated my book to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cody, it's been a pleasure.
And I appreciate this opportunity. It's so nice to meet you.
Nice to
And I
meet
hope
you.
we can get this message out.
You always learn something from someone. Like I said, we all have a story. Everyone has a story. But we
The first chapter in my book, I say everyone has a story, and here's mine. And I hope I hope many people can relate.
I'm sure somebody will. That's why I do this. I'm sure someone can relate to some degree or another. They don't have to be, in the same circumstances that you have
Of
experienced.
course not.
Thank God.
It's all relative.
Yeah, it's all relative. Thank you, and I appreciate you. And to everybody else, till next time, this is Sam West. Take care.
Bye-bye.